What's up, y'all? Welcome to 2nd and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast presented by Old City Sports Network, the best network for all your Philadelphia sports needs. This is your host, Michael Roscoe, and here's what we got going on for this week. It had been almost 2 years, but the Birds finally get a win by 15 or more points, crushing the New York Giants 28-3. We'll review that win, looking at the positives and the negatives of it, as well as previewing our next game versus the Bengals. This episode, the entire 2nd and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast, and Old City Sports Network are brought to you by Righteous Felon Craft Jerky. Use our promo code OCSN for 15% off your order at righteousfelon.com. We're also brought to you by SeatGeek. Use our promo code Old City Sports Network, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. 2nd and 15 and Old City Sports Network are also brought to you by Decals by Aaron and Warlord Beard Oil. Head on over to warlordbeardoil.com and use our promo code OLDSPORTS for 15% off your beard oils, washes, soaps, and more. Finally, head on over to oldcitysports.com to help contribute to the production of the podcast and the network as a whole by purchasing some awesome merch, including t-shirts, hoodies, flags, and more. Go ahead and get yourself a short sleeve or a long sleeve t-shirt or a hoodie, each between $20 and $30. What a deal. All right, let's start off this week's episode with a recap of the Week 7 win versus the New York Giants. Many people knew it was a revenge game for Saquon Barkley. They booed him into the stadium, talked all this shit beforehand, and even burned his jerseys all the way into this game. But for Saquon, he would get the last laugh that day against all those salty Giants fans. He had a slow start, but it didn't last too long. In the second quarter, because we didn't score in the first, with 11 minutes left in the half, Saquon takes the handoff for Hurts and goes off, able to get 55 yards downfield, which helped set up the inevitable, which would be a 3-yard rushing touchdown by the man himself, Saquon Barkley. The Birds would be on top 7-0. After a 3-and-out from the Giants, the Birds would get the ball back and be held to a 4th and 3 situation from the Giants' 41-yard line, and they decide to go for it. Out of the shotgun, Hurts steps back, fires off his back foot, hit as he throws, but perfectly finds A.J. Brown for a touchdown. The Birds on top 14-0. In the third quarter, the Giants made a field goal to make it 14-3. With under 10.5 minutes left to go in the quarter on a 1st and 10, Hurts hands off to Barkley, who was up the middle for a huge 38-yard gain, which would help set up a Jalen Hurts brotherly shove touchdown. Birds extend the lead 21-3. Saquon would make some more moves, this time gaining 41 rushing yards on a 1st and 10 from their own 8-yard line with under 2.5 minutes to go in the third, absolutely refusing to go down. Kenny Gainwell would take over soon after, gaining 17 rushing yards, which would set up yet another brotherly shove touchdown for Jalen Hurts, extending the lead again, this time 28-3. At this point in the game, Eagles backup quarterback Kenny Pickett would take snaps for the rest of the game, and on the opposite side, Giants quarterback Daniel Jones gets benched for his backup Drew Lock, who really doesn't do much himself, and the game would end with a final score Eagles 28, Giants 3. Jalen Hurts would finish the game 10 for 14 for 114 yards and 1 passing touchdown, as well as 7 carries for 22 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. The man of the game, Saquon Barkley, would finish the game with 17 carries for 176 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 receptions for 11 yards. A.J. Brown would finish with 5 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown. All right, after that recap, let's dive into some Eagles news and discussion. We got an injury update from the Wednesday injury report. For those who did not participate, those included right guard Mekhi Becton with a concussion, linebacker Zach Bond dealing with a shoulder injury, tight end Dallas Goedert dealing with that hamstring injury, and defensive tackle Byron Young also dealing with a hamstring injury. In other news, the Birds' Week 9 game against the Jacksonville Jaguars has been flexed out of the Sunday night football spot and will start earlier with a 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. The Birds made moves with the active roster, releasing wide receiver Paris Campbell as well as signing offensive lineman Jack Driscoll from the practice squad. With Campbell's release, it seems to indicate that Ainias Smith should be good to go should he be needed in a game if any other injuries are to occur with our wide receiver room. All right, so let's go into our discussions, opinions, and overreactions from that Week 7 win. Starting with the offense. Now, I know what a lot of you may be thinking. It's the Giants, which means anything regarding this game could be taken with a grain of salt. However, it is any given Sunday, and with that in mind, the Birds did some things very well and some things not so well. Starting with the things that did go well, that was mainly giving Saquon Barkley the ball. It would have been a war crime if we didn't feed him the ball. 19 total touches for a collective 187 rushing and passing yards, and a touchdown. The run game is what got us this win. 3 out of the 4 touchdowns were runs, 269 total yards against the Giants defense. This is why you run the ball. I don't understand why we weren't going crazy with the run game before this game. It seemed like Kellen Moore finally took control of the entire offense without the lingering shadows of Nick Sirianni's poor decisions. I loved how involved the run game this offense was. I also loved how on point our receiving game was. A.J. Brown went 5 for 5 on targets, 2 receptions. Jalen 10 for 14 throwing. Devontae went 1 for 2. Grant Calcaterra 1 for 1. Saquon 2 for 3. Our receivers did the job. Part of it goes on the quarterback, sure, but there weren't any terrible drops, I don't think. Also, on an interesting note, I don't know if anyone else caught this, but Kellen Moore had linebacker Ben Van Sumeren playing fullback for a few plays on offense. But oddly enough, on 5 plays, Van Sumeren's blocks helped running back Saquon Barkley and Kenny Gainwell accumulate 60 collective yards on the ground. Could this be something we see more of? I believe the last full-time Eagles starting fullback was Leonard Weaver, who last played for the Eagles in 2010. But I'm curious to see how this part-time fullback plays for Ben Van Sumeren later in the season, if at all. Back to the offense as a whole, on a more critical opinion, what I didn't like about the offense was how many sacks we allowed. But that goes in part with how long Jalen held onto the ball. The O-line allowed 4 sacks on Hurts for a total loss of 36 yards. However, I don't necessarily hate this because for the majority of the game, we had 2 backup linemen both on the left side, the quarterback's blind spot. So for us to only allow 4 sacks against a team that came into this game ranked number 1 in sacks, that's not that bad. But a lot of it could have been avoided if Jalen just made some quicker decisions. Guys, I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's facts. Not only that, but there were several open passes, including at least a couple to Devontae Smith, that we could have converted for a first down. It's moments like these that make or break a game against much tougher opponents. Overall, though, I'm more impressed with the offense this week compared to the previous week. It showed a lot of promise going into this upcoming game. With the defense, again, you could look at this any type of way since we were playing the Giants offense and Danny Dimes is just absolute ass. But still, to hold a team to just a field goal as well as accumulate 8 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 4 pass deflections, and 11 quarterback hits, I'd say that's a damn good job in my opinion. Nakobe Dean and Jalen Carter had 2 sacks each, and then you had Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat, and Jalix Hunt all accumulating 1 sack apiece. It's the variety of players getting a sack for me. Even Jalix Hunt getting into the mix too. Not that he's a bad player by any means, he just doesn't get a lot of snaps right now. Nearly 60 yards lost by the Giants from sacks, an excellent job from our rush defense. As for the secondary, They held Jones to under 100 yards and 0 touchdowns, seeming to get better and better as each week goes on. The rookies continue to ball out, with cornerback Cooper DeJean allowing only 3 receiving yards on almost 30 coverage snaps, and Quinyon Mitchell had another near interception while holding down Malik Neighbors. Mitchell, along with Slay and Sidney Brown on occasion, were able to hold the rookie powerhouse to only 41 receiving yards. Keep in mind that the 5-2 Commanders only beat the Giants by 3 in a game in which Daniel Jones was able to throw for 2 touchdowns and Malik Neighbors accumulated 127 yards and a touchdown. An impressive performance from the defense. Hopefully this upward trend with the defense continues as we take on a top receiving duo, and hopefully we see Quinyon Mitchell actually make an interception this time. All right, y'all, now we're going to dive into our Week 8 preview. The Birds are on the road again, this time going to the city whose college produced the Kelsey brothers in Cincinnati, Ohio, as the Eagles take on Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the Bengals. The Eagles are coming off back-to-back wins and just half a game under the current division leader in Washington, while the Bengals look to keep their playoff chances alive. Here's what I think that we need to do to secure a win against Joe Burrow this Sunday. On the offensive side of the ball, plain and simple, keep the ball on the ground as much as possible in the red zone. Jalen Hurts has struggled with passing in the red zone, including 2 interceptions in end zones. As a whole, the Eagles have a hard time scoring in the red zone, ranking 28th in the league in total red zone points, with only a 38% success rate amongst all scoring possibilities, field goals, touchdowns, whatever. I attribute this mainly to questionable play calling leading up to this game, such as refusing to take points as well as relying too much on passing versus running plays within the red zone. The Eagles have more red zone touchdowns with running than they do with passing. However, as of this moment, the Bengals' rush defense is 21st and their red zone defense is ranked 27th across the league. Plus, they allow an average of 126 rush yards per game. Saquon Barkley averages 109 rushing yards per game. If Saquon has the ball in their red zone, there's little to zero chance that he doesn't score. Overall, we should utilize the run game similarly to how we did against the Giants. Obviously, this game will be a lot different since it isn't a Saquon revenge game, but Saquon's been a dominant force this entire time, and the Bengals defense struggles with the run, and even more in the red zone. We can use our run game to an advantage in this scenario. Now, on the defense, this may be super obvious, but we definitely need to lock down Chase and Higgins in this game. Here's why from an analytic POV. The Bengals running game averages only 94.3 yards per game, ranking 28th across the league. Plus, they're 26th in total rush attempts and 15th in total rushing touchdowns. Meanwhile, with their passing attempts, they are ranked 11th in the league and they rank 4th in total passing touchdowns after 7 weeks. So, it's pretty obvious that the Bengals rely heavily on their passing game, something that over the past season and a little bit this season has struggled with on our defense. I'm not too worried as much about the rush defense as I am with the secondary in this game. However, with the addition of Mitchell and DeJean in the starting lineup, plus with some tweaks to the scheme that we've seen to make recently, this defense looks better going into this game compared to the first few games. Point being, our secondary needs to communicate and act as one stable unit if they want to succeed against the pass. There's been some miscommunications in previous games that have led to completions in the middle of the field by receivers and dropped interceptions against the deep passes. Plus, with injuries and potential missed time from starters such as Zach Bond and Darius Slay, we don't know that 100% yet though, we could see a couple different guys coming out on the field this Sunday on the defense. One thing that'll help will be if our rush defense, which looked great last week, is able to get pressure on Burrow before he can get the ball out. If our players in the secondary are commuting effectively enough to lock down the Bengals' top 2 targets, regardless of the type of coverage we're in, and our rush defense can wear down that O-line, Burrow will have a hard time making decisions, leading to problems and mistakes under pressure. It's simple, pretty obvious, but It's something that we got to do. All right, with some predictions. I think this game will be closer than last week, but I think we can pull off a win. So I'm going with our Birds in a close game with a score of 24-20. If we use our run game efficiently, I could see Saquon having another 90-plus yard game with a touchdown. Then I see Devontae Smith getting into the end zone this time, since he wasn't utilized a lot last week, gaining only one target for -2 yards. Not a great game for him for fantasy owners. I could see the Birds changing this up to get him in the mix more with this game. And of course, there's got to be at least one Jalen Hurts brotherly shove touchdown. It's almost a given at this point. And this might be a long shot prediction, but I'm predicting that Quinyon Mitchell gets his first NFL interception this game against Joe Burrow. All right, y'all, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok by searching at Second and 15, which is 2ND8ND15, or by the full name Second and 15, a Philadelphia Eagles fan podcast. You can also find the audio for each and every single episode releasing Thursday mornings on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Player FM, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see y'all next week. Don't forget the new flex time for this game now kicking off at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to stay fly like an eagle, and as always, go Birds!